Hello friends, it's your girl Alina back for another video, and in this one we'll be diving into the 5 things you need to know all around this upcoming October 2022 new moon in the very elusive, intimate, and intuitive water sign of Scorpio. We'll dive into why this lunation will be a very powerful time for making new friends, forging new bonds, and deepening pre-existing ones. We'll also see with these transits that this can be a very powerful time for self-mastery, as we see a lot of these transits highlighting different areas of our lives where we can kind of rise to the occasion and hone in on our intuitive skills that we can build up and forge. And quickly before we dive in, I'm excited to announce that the launch of the Auralign 2022 collection, including pre-orders for the physical planners as well as immediate digital downloads of the digital planners for the year, wall calendars, notebooks, tote bags, all the things, will be launching on November 1st. And for any of y'all who aren't aware, the Auralign Astrology Planner and now calendars are essentially planners and calendars that include notifications for all of the top astrological events of the year. They include dedicated full and new moon ritual pages where not only can you write and set intentions, but there are new features including tear away pages so you can tear out your full moon journal prompts. That way you can destroy the pages. It includes seasonal guides and so much more. Again, they will be launching November 1st, so mark your calendars, and if you haven't already, be sure to sign up for the email list, which is in the description box below. All right, with that said, let's dive in. First up, why is this lunation so important? In order to answer that, we need to answer the question of what exactly is a partial solar eclipse and how does it impact us? So, solar eclipses are when we see a new moon orbiting in between the sun and the earth, essentially making it invisible to the naked eye. Now, solar eclipses in general are seen as more amplified versions of new moons, where we can often feel deeper rooted callings for change, for evolution, for observing the things that we're doing in our lives and realizing with a little bit more clarity how we can maybe approach it in a different way to spark maybe a whole new chapter in our lives where we're starting something brand new, or we're just pivoting a little bit to improve upon the way that we are approaching things. Next, let's talk about the nature of a new moon. So, as many of y'all know, new moons mark the beginning of a new lunar cycle where the moon is essentially invisible in the night sky. And just as we see that the sun's light is no longer reflected upon the moon and it's at its lowest energetic point, its lowest light point in the cycle, so too can we be reminded that it's perfectly normal and okay to have a rest period before the beginning of a new cycle or a new phase of our own lives. This is why many people do new moon rituals, where they sit, relax, maybe meditate, journal for a little bit, and they set intentions for the new lunar cycle ahead. The new moon isn't really seen as a time of like kickstarting and being in action necessarily, and more so planning things out, assessing the situation, and reflecting on the previous lunar cycle, what worked and what didn't work, so we can then move forward, pivot in more efficient ways as we enter this new phase. And as we see the light build on the moon, leading all the way up to its energetic peak at the full moon, where it's at its brightest point, so too can the momentum that we set at a new moon build upon itself. Next up, let's talk about the nature of a new moon in the sign of Scorpio. So Scorpio, being a water sign, is definitely a very passionate and intuitive sign. It's ruled by the 8th house of rebirth and transformation. So it really impacts the areas of our lives that include control, intimacy, sharing, money, and power. And so given that this is a partial solar eclipse, this is a new moon, really amplifying the energy around new beginnings, changes, and shifts in the sign of Scorpio that is ruled by the 8th house of rebirth and change. This lunation will definitely be facilitating new shifts in our lives. Now, on one hand, these can be very positive shifts. These can be shifts especially relating to our interpersonal relationships, especially because Scorpio, when the moon is in Scorpio, we can often be more energetically sensitive. So this can show up in a more positive or constructive way in relation to connecting on a deeper level with one another. And on another aspect of that, a sort of shadow side to Scorpio can also be some levels of insecurity, because Scorpio is very interested in control, right? And so in relation to sensitivities, on another side of the spectrum is that we can often sense some potential bad energy or some negative energy or some unconstructive energy from people. And it's a lot easier for us to steer clear of that because of those heightened senses, but it also will offer us heightened clarity during this new moon for what is and isn't working within our interpersonal relationships. Now, getting back to the more shadow aspect of Scorpio, there can often be a heightened awareness or fear of abandonment, of disloyalty, fear of betrayal, loss, or even, our vulnerabilities being exposed. It's kind of interesting because I feel like Scorpios, they can often have a heightened awareness of what's going on and a heightened ability to observe the deeper rooted intentions behind the things that people do and say. And so in turn, sometimes they can assume that everybody sees their vulnerabilities as well. And so they often want to protect themselves. And there's a lot of, pop culture negative connotations with Scorpios of being vindictive and things like that. But a lot of that is rooted in self-preservation and also being able to see people a lot more clearly than a lot of other people can. But all of that to say, during this lunation, these Scorpio themes will be coming up and they will be very powerful areas to focus on when setting any type of new moon intentions, reflecting on the past, or just observing how the patterns around us manifest. All right, next up, let's dive into the transits surrounding this new moon and partial solar eclipse. First up, we see both the moon and sun conjuncting with Venus. Now, a conjunction aspect in astrology indicates blended, intensified, and mutually supported energy between the astral bodies involved. Oftentimes, when we have a conjunction between astral bodies, it can be hard to tell from which planet that's really impacting us because they tend to bolster one another and amplify one another's impact on us. Now, this is the type of transit that often brings about very sociable, intimate, kind, and peaceful, harmonious interactions with one another. I know that sounds like such fluff because I don't know about y'all, but whenever I look up repeating numbers like 222, 333, or there's some obscure, even a crystal, and sometimes people try to describe them and they didn't do all the research and they're like, oh, this number means peace and harmony and light, and but all of the numbers sound like that. But all that to say, this transit really does offer that type of energy within our interpersonal relationships. On one side with this transit, this can be such a great time to just relax with friends, have a movie night, have a game night, really lean into the comfy aspects of, Venus coming into play, this planet of love, relationships, and having this conjunction, the supportive, bolstering energy with the moon and sun, our inner world and our outer world coming together. This can be a very powerful time, really lending itself to the themes that I mentioned before with a Scorpio moon, of making, forging, and deepening relationships, whether they're new or pre-existing. On the other side of this transit, also considering the Scorpio moon that we have, usually under Scorpio moons, we can't have a new beginning without an ending of some sort. Again, Scorpio, really ruled by the 8th house of rebirth and transformation, is really a sign that can facilitate these changes, the closing of a chapter in order to open a new one. And so that could likely show up, especially with Venus playing a large role during this lunation. It could likely show up within our relationships. So all in all with this transit, this is a powerful time for nesting, cleaning your home, decorating it, making it extra cozy and nice as we prepare for the winter time, and relaxing with loved ones. And before we continue, if you have made it all the way to this point in the video and you're not already subscribed, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell as well, because I make videos for every full and new moon, breaking them down, and yeah, love to have you. Next up, we see Saturn, currently in Aquarius, squaring off with Uranus, currently in Taurus. Now, as many of y'all know, a square aspect in astrology indicates heightened levels of challenges or friction within the realms of our lives that the astral bodies impact. Now, this is the type of transit that can often highlight responsibility or commitment issues, potential bad habits, or outdated belief systems that could be roadblocks, specifically within our relationships or our careers. Again, we have this friction involving Saturn playing a huge role. Saturn is really this planet of responsibility, of rising to the occasion, of coming into our own. And it's having this friction with Uranus currently in the sign of Taurus that impacts things like our material world relative to our home, our finances. And so during this type of transit, we might notice that there is some type of friction or spotlight on the fact of like, man, I keep on having this roadblock, and you might notice some clarity of where that roadblock is coming from. This could be a transit that also offers clarity around whether or not you really want that thing. You know, sometimes when we're presented with an issue of like, you're not really committed to this, sometimes that is a wake-up call to really hone in on that aspect of ourselves, really rise to the occasion, lean into ways that we can build up our discipline or build up our routine or our sense of self to really meet the challenge where it is. And in other situations, this can be a cosmic spotlight highlighting the fact that maybe we don't have a lot of passion or commitment because we're not as interested as we thought we were in maybe a certain line of work, a passion project, or a relationship. And that's okay. Transits like these that highlight these challenges in our lives can either help us to dive deeper, to kind of like dig our feet deeper into the ground, to be like, no, I'm gonna work on this. This is a roadblock that I can handle. I'm gonna talk to this person. I'm gonna do this because I really care about it. Or they can highlight challenges that make us realize, you know what? I don't really wanna be doing this anymore. And that's okay too. This can be a powerful time to kind of rid ourselves of these blockages, of these restrictions, of these roadblocks that we might be noticing through being observant and choosing to pivot rather than push against them. All right, next up are ways to align with this energy. So as with all full moons, now can be a powerful time to lean into and set intentions around the constructive traits of the sign that the moon is in, that being Scorpio. That can be themes around things like our passion, our resourcefulness, our inquisitive nature, what sparks passion within us, what sparks curiosity to dive deeper in interpersonal relationships or our jobs. Again, with this partial solar eclipse, it can tend to highlight some flaws or cracks or inconsistencies in our systems or environments. Especially with this Saturn-Uranus squaring off, we can potentially see these areas of our lives that we might want to put more energy into, or maybe we realize that we've been pushing against a rock and it's time to flow around it and be like water. And so setting intentions around clarity for these pivots, clarity around what does and doesn't need to be in our lives anymore, clarity around how we can step up to the plate and finally do the dang thing. I feel called to bring up the whole conversation around procrastination because I feel like a lot of us, we have a lot of big goals or intentions, or we know what we really need to do, but we find ourselves procrastinating sometimes. And I kind of want to share a lesson that I learned about that could be very helpful and poignant for this new moon. And that is that our procrastination is often emotional regulation. Oftentimes there is a task that we need to do. Maybe that is doing research on something, finally calling this person, finally emailing that person, responding to something, whatever it is that we might be procrastinating on. And for whatever reason, we feel uncomfortable. Maybe doing it makes us feel stressed. Maybe doing it makes us feel lost because we don't know how to. And so as an emotional regulation, to avoid feeling that discomfort in whatever capacity that is, we choose to avoid it because on the deepest level of our subconscious, we're always looking for comfort, right? And so we procrastinated on things. And when I learned that, it really helped me to understand that I could look at what I was avoiding in a different way. But having that self-awareness that procrastination for many is really rooted in emotional regulation, and avoiding that emotional discomfort can help us to dive deeper into where that stems from so we can then move forward. We went a little off-road on that tangent, but you know, I figured this might resonate with some of y'all. I know it will. And if it did, please comment down below because I know I'm not alone in this, you know, consistent battle with procrastination sometimes, even when we have the highest of intentions. So to wrap that up, going back to general tips for aligning with this energy, this can be a very powerful time for self-mastery, self-empowerment, relative to finally tackling things that you might have noticed have undermined your growth, have undermined your progression in different aspects of life. Now, specifically in terms of a new moon ritual, as many of y'all already know, eclipses are generally seen as energetically chaotic times, and I personally don't really recommend setting intentions during that type of chaotic energy, but to each their own. And if you do want to set intentions, setting intentions around themes of Scorpio, themes around our passion, intimacy, interpersonal connections, self-preservation, insecurities, and self-mastery. And as we see the light build on the moon, leading all the way up to its energetic peak at the full moon at its brightest point, so too can the momentum around the intentions that we set build. All right, with that said, let's dive into these new moon writing prompts. If you have your Auralign astrology planner, go ahead and flip to the new moon ritual page so you can write all these things out. What I will do is I will put up the questions on the screen. I invite you to pause the video when you see them, write them out, unpause, and when we're done, I'll come back. Moving into this new lunar cycle, do you have any new intentions or goals? Have you ever had a skill that you have felt called to master or hone in on? What would it look like to face an area of life that you might have been avoiding? All right, I hope that those writing prompts sparked some ideas for you, maybe resonated. And if they did, I invite you to share them in the comment section below. I will be responding to all of the comments, especially the first few days during the full moon as well. I check pretty much every day. All right, next up, I'm gonna go ahead and answer one or two of the writing prompts to spark some conversation and also catch up with y'all. So a skill that I have felt called to hone in the past, one of them that comes to mind, the first one that comes to mind has been my graphic design skills. So as many of y'all know, I've designed and created these Auralign planners, and I've added a lot of new things to this year's planner, and it's taken a lot of time to sit and hone in on that graphic design skill. And I feel very proud of myself because there are a lot of new graphs and features that I had no idea how to create. And I was able to build upon that this year. And as some of y'all know, as I mentioned, we also will have digital downloads of the planners. And not only is it going to be just a plain PDF file, it will be interactive. So you'll be able to hit on different tabs to go to different pages. You'll be able to utilize different apps where then you can set up notifications. And that was a skill that didn't come up out of nowhere. It came from around, in 2019 when I first started the planner line, where I decided to take a whole season, a whole summer to learn how to graphically design. If you made it to the end of this video, I invite you to comment 3 black heart emojis to really represent the Scorpio passionate love that's very gothy and elusive. And as mentioned before, the official drop of the 2023 Auralign astrology planners will be on November 1st. You will be able to not only pre-order the physical planner and wall calendars, a new feature this year, but you will also be able to automatically, immediately get your digital download of the virtual Auralign planner, which we will have in many different time zones. But with all of that said, I will leave you with my favorite quote, and that is, be gentle with yourself, because life is about the journey, not the destination.